actually went to high school was because one of my friends at the time, he was like, oh, I'm starting high school in a month or in a couple of months or whatever. And at that point I was 20 or I was 19 or something like that. And I was like, yeah, well, if he starts, then I can start as well, I guess. Then we can do it together. That's better than going there alone. I like doing things with my friends. So I would, like, I signed up to the same high school. And then they were like, don't you have an elementary school diploma? I was like, no, I don't. Well, I do, but they're all like F's because, well, they're not even F's. I just didn't show up, so I didn't get any grades or anything. No diploma. And I'm like, okay. Then you need to go for like an evaluation, so they know what level you're at and to see if you're a complete retard, like how much do they have to help you, and is it realistic that you can actually finish a high school. Essentially, I don't think they're allowed to deny you entrance to a high school in Denmark, but they might say you need some serious fucking help, and we need to ask the government to supply that help. Yeah, so I needed to go to these evaluations, and it was 2 evaluations as far as I remember. One of them was like physics and chemistry, and the other one was Danish and math or something weird like that. Yeah. Thinking back, I hope it was Danish and English at the same time. What the fuck is that screen bullshit? But yeah, I just remember like going to the physics and chemistry. That wasn't my strongest suit. So I was just like, I have no, like, and obviously I didn't study at all before coming up there, because I was just raw dogging it. So they were gonna get what my actual skill actually was, and not what I could study a couple of days beforehand. So I just went up there, and then there was a guy who came out. Like, I was waiting, and a guy came out of the evaluation, and he told me, yeah, just talk about atoms. Because if you talk about atoms, then that's both chemistry and physics, and they both fucking love that. So if you do that, it's gonna be super easy, and you can just slide right through. It's no problem at all. And I was like, cool, atoms, I know atoms, small fucking things, no problem. I got this, look at me. And then I get in there, and then the teacher's like, hey, my name is blah 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 blah. Short introduction and so on. And like, so, physics and chemistry, tell us, like, is there anything you can tell us about that? Yes, let me tell you. Atoms, fucking great. You know atoms, right? Everybody knows atoms, so great. Keeping everything going and so on. And I'm like, yeah, atoms, that's great. What can you tell us about atoms? Nothing. I know fucking nothing about atoms. Why the fuck did I think this was a good idea? So I just sit there and was like, I don't know fucking anything about atoms. What can I tell you about atoms? And I couldn't tell him any fucking thing. So it was like super fucking awkward, and I needed to pivot so hard. I need to pivot the hardest I've ever pivoted any conversation. So I think instead of talking about atoms, we ended up talking about how to calculate points in a, what do you call it, in like a, oh motherfucker, in like how do you make graphs in a chart, whatever. How do you do that? And I was like, yeah, you make like this line, and then you put numbers in them and you multiply them and so on. And like, yeah. And then if you multiply these, and they were like helping me like I was a fucking retard. And like, yeah, so if you multiply these two numbers, then what do you get? Oh yeah, okay. I remember now. It works like this. Okay, so if you do this, I had forgotten all of my Is this better? Why am I getting so many of these? I had forgotten all of my elementary school knowledge at this point. I didn't remember fucking shit. Like, it was so bad. It was so bad. So, like, the teachers just walked me through the most basics of basic knowledge. Like, yeah, so when you calculate numbers, like, if you multiply these three numbers or whatever, what is the sequencing of this math shit and so on? And like, I don't remember. Maybe this, yeah. What if we do parentheses? How does that work? I think it's like this and so on. And just I was like, this is going like fucking shit. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, we can see. And then they told me how they thought, like they evaluated, or they told me up front what they thought, and they were like, yeah, we can definitely see that you've forgotten a lot of things, but we can also see it doesn't take that long for you to bring it back. So yeah, that's no problem for us. And that was like the chemistry, physics, math parts. And then I was so much better at like anything verbal and having to present things and just being able to make up bullshit. Like any time where I need to calculate things and be very factual, that's not where I excel. So doing like the Danish English review, I just had to read some kind of text. Yeah, I had to actually read a text and then present them and tell them about the text so they could see I knew how to read and write. And then it was so basic. It was like, yeah, this is a text that talks about this. It's a relatively old text. And like, oh, how can you see it? It's old. Oh, I can see it's old because all the nouns starts with a capital letter. And we used to capitalize nouns in Old Danish. So, like, when I say old, I don't know, it's like 50, 70 years old or something like that. And then the Danish teacher just got so fucking hot and bothered that I knew that. So she was like, yeah, that's right, it is old, and you can see it from the capitalization, yeah. What else can you tell us? And I'm like, I don't know at this point. Like, I feel like I peaked. If you expect more out of me at this point, you're gonna be very disappointed. Like, that is it. But I was able to, like, I'm really good at reading a room usually, especially when presenting something. And then I can see when I hit on something people care about and that seems interesting to them. And then I usually just like buckle down on that and keep going. Whereas, yeah, and then I can narrow in, is this, am I saying something correct right now, or am I completely off and not hitting the mark at all? And then just use that, and I did that in all of my verbal exams, and yeah, it was so effective. I was very happy to have that skill. So yeah, back to the beginning, I guess, or maybe just continue from here. So I got into high school. I did get into high school, even though I didn't have an elementary school diploma. And then we were in doing high school things and so on. And I think a couple of weeks before high school, I told my parents, like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm moving out tomorrow. I had applied for a dormitory room. I didn't tell them. And then, yeah, I just didn't really give them any heads up because I didn't think about it. It's like, oh well, I'm moving out, and I guess I should tell you, I move out tomorrow. Goodbye, mom and dad. And then I took my car and I drove all my things to my dormitory room, and that was pretty much it. Yeah. And then, yeah, high school started, we did shit. And yeah, it was super fucking basic, it was quite boring. And then a couple of months in, I'm not in the same class as my friends who I went there to start high school with, but I relatively quickly made friends in my class, and he made friends in his class, and so on. So we didn't really hang out that much during school time. And then after a couple of months, I reach out like, "Oh, how's school going for you?" What the fuck? Wait, what? So this one opens and closes that one. Okay, I don't understand this. So after a couple of months, I reach out to my friend who I started high school with, the entire reason why I went to high school. So, hey, how's it going? And he was like, oh, what the fuck? Okay, that hurt a lot more than I expected. So yeah, how's it going? How's high school treating you? And so on. And he was like, yeah, I dropped out after 2 weeks. I didn't want to do that. I was like, what the fuck, bro? Like you couldn't even last 2 weeks in high school. What the fuck is wrong with you? So yeah, so then suddenly I was, so to speak, alone in high school, and my friend, who was the only reason I went there, was no longer there. And then, yeah, long story short, I ended up graduating and everything, and he didn't graduate high school. So he had to go and do these like single courses, and he spent like 3 years on that or something like that, and he got, yeah, and it was a complete slog for him to get a high school diploma. And I finished high school like 1 or 2 years before him. Easy fucking mode. It was all gravy. It was super nice. And I would never have started high school without him. It was so weird. It was so weird he dropped out. But hey, it worked out in the end for me. But yeah, being in high school was a bit weird, but it never really bothered me. But I was always the oldest because I had 5 years of doing jack shit in my life. So everybody else was like 16 years old and I was 20 years old. So that was weird in general, like, but yeah, everybody was super nice and made a lot of great friends. Overall, a good experience. I didn't like the school part of it. That wasn't... I would much rather play games. I ended up having a... Like on my last year of high school, I had a 30% absence rate, whatever. Yeah, and I think the allowed limit was 10%, but I just figured out if you said the right words and you bullshit enough, you were actually allowed. Like, they would cut you a lot of slack. So I just learned what to say and how to please the counselors and so on, so I could continue the education and not have to participate as much in school.
What?
But yeah, not everybody thought it was a good idea that I had that much absence. But you also have to understand, like, sometimes games came out during my time in high school. So like Diablo 3 was released, for example, during high school. So obviously we had to play Diablo 3 a lot. And I really enjoyed Diablo 3, and we did, like in vanilla, when it was released, there was like chest runs was all the shit, and we did chest runs for like 72 hours straight without any sleep. And obviously you cannot go to school when you have to do chest runs. So that was like 3 days of absence right there. And it's not really my fault that Blizzard choose to release games outside of like vacation periods, so yeah. I think they need to plan better.
Failure stings, sister. Yet pain is the finest of all teachers.
And then at some point we figured out you can install, like we could install Heroes of Might and Magic 3 on our laptops. And then all the boys in class would just all play Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and we would be in the same game. So we would, like, so the way it works is one person take their turn, and then it's the next person, they take their turn, and so on. So you all have to wait for each other. So that kind of works when you're in class, because then while you wait for the others to take their turn, you can kind of pay attention in class and try to learn something. So we would all play, and we would all wait for each other and so on. And then sometimes somebody would actually try to pay attention and answer a question, like put their hands up, they were chosen by the teacher, and then start answering. But then if it got their turn and like another boy sat next to them, the other boy would start poking him, like finish your turn, like finish up, it's your turn now. And then the boy who was answering the question, he, as soon as he noticed, he would be like, oh shit, no teacher, I don't know the answer anyway, I'm sorry. And then start playing their computer. It was so obvious. And I feel bad for the teachers looking back, but yeah, it was such a shit show. And I've never played as many useless pointless flash games as I did during school time. Like anything to avoid having to pay attention in class. It was like, obviously looking back and thinking about it, like I wish I would have done it I wish I would have done it very differently and paid a lot more attention. Not because I feel like I need the knowledge, but because I just feel bad for the teachers. Like, what a rough fucking job teaching a room of 30 kids where only 2 of them pays attention or something like that, and everybody else is just playing games on their computer. I feel so bad for them. And to be fair, when we had like good teachers, we had a really good teacher in, I don't know what that class would be called, like social economics or something. He was super good. Like, he would make the subject very interesting, so everybody paid attention, and he had expectations for you, and he had high expectations. What is this? So yeah, so that was really nice. Everybody paid attention in his class, and everybody got higher grades than in other classes, and I got the highest grades in his class. And then a lot of the, what do you call, like the teachers' pets and such, who usually got like straight A's and so on, at some point, I don't know, we were talking about grade, and then they didn't get like an A in that class, and they were like, oh yeah, it's such a hard class. And then I was the only one who got an A, but they knew I was just a fucking slacker in every other class, and like they just perceived me as a slacker, so they got so pissed that I was the only one who was getting A's in his class. And that was so funny. I enjoyed that endlessly. And I would remind them of it as often as I could. And it would piss them off every single time. I loved it. It was the best. And it wasn't a difficult class for me.
Make it fun.
All you had to do was like listen and then
I gave the
with some
Empire
logic
led
be
us
able
the
to
Black Arts will
argue
never-
for various
Farewell.
points and